Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
So here's a great question for you. Say you're spending the night in an underwater hotel, you're living in your underwater habitat, your house, you're at an underwater hotel, or you're just doing like scientific research in something in an underwater habitat somewhere. What do you do when disaster strikes? Because it's very possible. I say very possible, but there is a history of it happening, especially when you're dealing with any kind of extremes, as being underwater does. I mean, we look at, space and the potentials of what can happen there. And we look at what has happened so far underwater as well. You look at Sea Lab 3, after a series of Sea Lab 1, Sea Lab 2, then we have Sea Lab 3. And there was a series of catastrophic errors, including death, that happened for it. So you've got that, even though some of it was very suspect as far as what occurred, still there was a danger element to it. You look to natural things. You look at Aquarius, located off the coast of Florida, a habitat that still exists today. Years ago, there was a hurricane that came through, and it was so vast that it actually shifted slightly Aquarius, and it sits over 60 feet underwater, but it was still affected by a natural phenomenon. So how do we combat these things? How do we deal with them, and move forward in an environment where safety is paramount? And that's one of the things we always look at when we're talking about underwater habitats is there's many, many different things to do and to look at. But if we can't guarantee safety and we can't do that, then it's all for naught at that point in time, in my opinion, because you can't have people dying and grow a business or even, a hobby. So, we look at things to do. And, for me, the answer is multifaceted, depending on what the problem is. You definitely have to look at redundancies when it comes to your stuff, whether it's, power, oxygen, communication, stuff along those lines. You're going to have redundancies in there regardless, or at least you should. And then what do you do about other things? Well, for us, we're dedicated to building shallow at first. So that takes care of a lot of problems when you start dealing with going deeper and deeper. Aquarius, even though it's only 60 some feet underwater, it's still 2 atmospheres. So you have a decompression issue you have to deal with getting people out of the habitat and to land. And then you've also got increased pressure. Sea Lab, we actually have. I think we've got episodes out there where we talk strictly about the Sea Lab program with Babe, where we discuss this, and he goes into detail where the failures were that. You always look at, people think about, well, what if it floods, or what if it, hit hull failure and stuff along those lines. And those are obviously the concerns you're going to have when you're underwater is what do you do to combat having water come into the habitat? And so obviously that comes from a design element, obviously, but then you have to have some kind of answer to these problems as well. And, what you build the habitat out of really dictates a lot of that. It has the monitoring systems, as technology has advanced, we've got better ways to monitor these structures visually as well as with sensors and stuff. So there is that. And we could go down a rabbit hole here of letting our worst fears and our worst case scenarios come to mind. And we should definitely go there, especially when we're working on something like this. We want to be thinking about what is the craziest worst case scenarios that can happen so that we can learn and work to combat against those. The problem is you don't know what you don't know. And so sometimes it's stuff that you don't learn until stuff happens. And that's not always the best answer that people want to hear, but it's a real answer. So that's why, you bring on smarter people than you to talk through these situations and these issues. So as this is getting a little long, I want to throw it out there. What is your number one concern within underwater habitat? Where would your point of failure, or your biggest, maybe not even a point of failure, but where would your biggest concern be as far as what could go wrong spending even one night underwater?